Hey. So today I'm going to talk about LUTs. Earlier today, someone asked me a question in one of my videos, how I do my kind of film look to stuff. And normally I do it in a slightly different way than I'm going to show you today. But that's because what I'm going to show you today will work both in an offline type production, but also in real time, directly in engine. And so if you are unfamiliar with LUTs, stands for look up table, and it's basically just an array of RGB values that tell whether it's Unreal Engine or any of your compositing applications, video editing applications, Lightroom, any stuff like that. When you make a color change to an image, it's going to shift those colors from a known default, right? So if something's 225 red in your scene, and you change the hue or whatever, maybe it'll go from red to orange, or from red to purple, or something like that. You'll shift colors both in their value, in their hue, and their saturation. And that's fundamentally, whenever you're adding contrast or whatever to something, you're basically changing one of those types of values. And so if we go to Unreal Engine's documentation, when using LUTs within Unreal Engine, there's two key parts of this that we absolutely need in here to know and to have for this to work. The first one is that you need to get your LUT texture example from them. You can probably get it in other places, but if you're downloading stuff from people you don't know, best to use a company like Epic that you can trust, that they're not going to give you malware or something like that. And the other thing to know is what happens after we've done our color correction, how to import that into the engine. And so how I do my color correction in this scenario is that we're going to use Adobe Premiere. And not everyone has any Adobe applications. Fundamentally, as long as you have like GIMP, for example, 100% free and open source, this will work. It will just be slightly different. If you use the documentation, they use Photoshop. GIMP is basically a free clone of Photoshop. Not really a clone. It is very different and kind of awkward to use, but if that's what you got, that's what you got. I've done stuff that's in my portfolio that I've color corrected in GIMP. There's nothing wrong with that. But in this scenario, we need something that will give us the ability to make color changes to an image, preferably the image that you're something from the scene that you're working in, because that is going to matter a lot. And if you have Premiere and you can follow along with this part, great. Otherwise, just think of this as you're learning some concepts, very easy concepts, nothing complicated, nothing hard. I don't expect everyone to understand color or, anything like that. You're just looking for something that you like. And so you could theoretically download someone else's LUT. Again, only download from people you trust. I'm not, saying use so-and-so's from so-and-so's video on YouTube. We don't know those people. Data safety is very important. Protecting your computers and your personal information, all that kind of stuff, that is entirely on you if you decide to download from somewhere else. But assuming that you're already using Unreal Engine, downloading something from their help databases and whatnot, there's a reasonable amount of trust that we are putting in Epic at that particular point. So I don't like posting links to stuff, for that same reason. It's very, if you know anything about data security and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, we've created a new project within Premiere. If you don't know how to use Premiere, or you don't have Premiere, again, doesn't matter for this that much, but I do recommend, if you're serious about it, in terms of a whole like production pipeline, if you're doing like any type of like film type of scenario, you know, you're probably already running Premiere, After Effects, DaVinci Resolve. You know, I used to also use Fusion back in the day, occasionally use Nuke, that kind of stuff. It's all going to be more or less the same, just, you know, whatever specific changes to those applications notwithstanding. And we're also going to want an adjustment layer. And with that adjustment layer selected, go down on the right-hand side of the window. There's what's called a Lumetri color. And do not add an effect in Lumetri color. You have to use this panel over here, just there when you make a project in the more recent versions of Premiere. If you use an older version, it may not be there, it may not support, you know, X feature that I'm using here. I can't really support all that in terms of like making video and showing all the ins and outs and this, that version and the other thing. So we're just going to go with, this is Premiere 2023. I don't remember if 2024 is out. I don't think I have it installed because right now I'm pretty much only using Premiere to make LUTs in my day-to-day life. So anyway, let's keep going here. So with your adjustment layer selected, select Lumetri color and just have at it. There's really only a few rules, things like vignetting, anything that's more of like an image effect that will not carry over. All we really care about are the actual RGB values of the final color part of the post-processing here. And so this is also probably a good like 80-90% of most like film look type of stuff anyway. There's other effects that you can add on top of that. We're not going to worry about that stuff at this point. So I've already done some color correcting. It's not the best, it's not the worst. It's what I did when I first sat down and remembered how to apply LUTs in Unreal Engine. Again, I typically do stuff outside, color stuff outside of Unreal because most of my work is offline media anyway. But I've, you know, adjusted my color temperature, cooled it down, brought my highlights, my whites down just to make it look like older film a little bit. And then I've just adjusted some curves to get a little bit of contrast pulling in various color channels. I didn't go much further than that because I felt like for this I didn't really need it. And you know, if you go too far, it can get a little bit weird, and you don't want weird if you can help it. And so once you have your color the way you want, double check that you did it in your adjustment layer. I make this mistake all the time where I have my image selected, and then copy that and then paste that into your timeline above your RGB table image. And so if I turn that adjustment layer off, this is what it looks like by default. With the color correction applied, you can see that the color has changed. So the next thing you want to do is just export this as a single image. Right now, I mean, very often I don't export single images from Premiere, but this is how I figured it out right in front of recording video. It doesn't really matter where on the timeline you go because it's all one image anyway. Set your in point and your out point to be the same frame. Make sure that you're exporting a PNG file. Give it a unique name. Don't overwrite your original image, and hit export. That's pretty much it for the Premiere portion. I am trying to move through this as fast as I possibly can. I apologize if I'm talking fast. I've had a lot of caffeine today. Okay, so go back to Unreal Engine, import the image that you exported from Premiere. And again, like I mentioned in the beginning when we were at the documentation side, it's going to tell you how to interpret that image within the Unreal Engine image editor tool. I don't really know what they actually call this off the top of my head, but really the important settings are MipGen settings. You want to set that to no mipmaps. And then under texture group, you want to set that to color lookup table. And then save your image so that it saves within Unreal Engine. Make sure you have your image selected. Select your post-process volume and find your color grading LUT. If you type LUT into the search bar, it will bring that up. And then just apply that to your scene. Boom. And you get what should be within like 99.9% of the image that you edited in Premiere in terms of color accuracy. Let's go back to Premiere and just kind of compare to make sure that we've got everything set up correctly. And it's going to recalculate this a little bit, but it doesn't really matter. It's more or less exactly the same thing. It won't really look 100% correct, especially in the shadows, until we've denoised and all that kind of stuff. But as you can see there, it is pretty much exactly the the exact same color. I can see a slight difference between these two. Like, it's not quite as dark here as it is here. Doesn't really matter. Unreal Engine is at a higher bit depth under the hood than what we're working with in Premiere. So, there's going to be a little bit of difference. Most likely that is the reason. If you want like further image effects, like chromatic aberration, like film grain, that kind of stuff, that stuff is within the post-process volume. I don't mess with that stuff generally. I did realize for the first time today that vignetting is on by default. And so if I were to render to file, I would most likely want to set that to 0 and then do that stuff in post again. If you bake that stuff into your output frames, you're stuck with it. If you need to make a change to it, you have to re-render. Best to do that stuff in post if you can, like After Effects or Resolve or Nuke or whatever. But probably also other vignetting controls or whatever. That's mobile, probably, yeah. Things like chromatic aberration is another thing that you can do. Gives it a little bit of a film look thing. I don't love Unreal Engine's chromatic aberrations tool in terms of how the chromatic aberration works. William Fauché gave a pretty good breakdown tutorial about how he does that, which is going to be better than probably anything that I can whip up real quick to show. I would do most of my stuff probably in After Effects most of the time because it's what I have installed, at least on this machine. I do have DaVinci Resolve for my old machine, but I don't think I've installed it here. My dongle's on the old machine. But if you're going to do it in Unreal, try to keep it down to a minimum, because the more you push it, the more broken it kind of looks. But just give it a little bit of a kiss of chromatic aberration. Don't go too crazy. Try to look at it as high res as you can when you're doing that kind of thing, just so that you can kind of dial that in. Probably something like 0.5 at like a UHD type resolution is probably all you need. Again, when you're trying to make something look like film, anything analog is going to have a lot more artifacts than something that's digital. This is something I have to deal with all the time at work. I'm not going to talk about where I work and what I do and all that kind of stuff, just because of NDAs and all that stuff. I don't want to go anywhere near that. But I am typically at work trying to make something look like it came from a bygone era of filmmaking. And it's more of an art than it is a science. And really what makes something look real isn't how perfect it is. It's about how imperfect it is. But you have to be careful, because something that's not photoreal is technically imperfect in this context, but isn't necessarily what you're going for, right? So, you try to work in a very photorealistic type of, way. It's one of the reasons why I don't love Unreal Engine's chromatic aberration, but if you just do a little bit, it's fine. Just little hints of imperfection, using depth of field, using motion blur, all that kind of stuff is going to help push it in that direction. Using film grain, there's even theoretically things like lens dirt if you're careful with it and don't go too far. I've worked on film restoration stuff in the past several years where there's huge globs of dirt on the lens, and one of our guys had to go and paint that out and that kind of stuff. And it's a difficult thing to do, especially if there's no data of what's behind there. So yeah, that can be pretty dicey. Anything that you can do just to give it that perfect imperfection kind of thing will help make stuff feel more real, more film-like. How we light stuff today is very different from how people used to light stuff, back in the 70s or, 80s or whatever. And you can see that transition happen during the 80s even during the 70s, really. If you look at movies like Apocalypse Now is a good example of a transitional movie in terms of like quality of the film and image. You know, that's a very, very pretty film with very few artifacts. It looks fairly modern today, not so much in like the superhero big blockbuster visual effects type thing, but you know, except for the fact that you know who the actors are and how old they are. Some of them aren't still with us, that kind of thing. If you know all that stuff, you know, you'll know that that movie was shot in the late 70s. But at the same time, you know, the quality of the lighting, the level of noise and grain that's in the film and that kind of stuff is relatively low compared to something like Star Trek the Motion Picture from roughly the same period in time. Or if you look at Alien, you know, roughly from the same period of time, within a few years of each other. Maybe even within a year of each other in some cases. Star Wars. You see a lot of difference between those types of films where Star Wars used not the highest quality film, but it gave it a distinct look, right? And so that's going to affect, you know, how hot your highlights are to a degree, you know, whereas if you look at like a Marvel movie, there's a lot more dynamic range things, so that while there's still contrast, you're not losing, you know, you look at a Marvel film, you're not really losing color information because it's been so perfectly manufactured, right? Whereas something that's older, you know, is not perfectly in focus. It's not perfectly color timed and all that kind of stuff. Although I was watching the 4K version of The Abyss again that just came out, you know, and I love all, you know, how they improved it without changing it dramatically. It's just the color looks really good. Again, it's one of those movies that was just in that kind of window of time where things look great without looking too clean, too processed. And, you know, once we hit the 90s and started moving in the direction of like digital everything, you know, there's a kind of a magic to the quality of the images that came out where it looked great without looking too impractically perfect. You know, there's chaos, there's energy, there's dirt, there's noise. And, you know, that was one of the kind of things that I wanted to do with these shots, really, was, you know, I did want to kind of make it look like a moon landing, you know, type film, where it was shot handheld with a little Leica portable film camera, video camera type of thing, but still have it look good without being too broken down, too reduced. And hopefully that's working for everybody. And I'm going to end that here. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.